Hello everyone, in this tutorial we're looking at the while loop. The while loop is the simplest kind of loop in JavaScript, so let's take a look at it. We're starting off with a variable I and we're setting it to 1. So the while loop looks like this. We have while I is less than or equal to 10, do this, and then increment I by 1. It's very easy to run into an infinite loop with a while loop. So for example, if I took this stuff away and we said while I do this I++, well, what this would happen here is we'd say while 1, this would evaluate to true, and then we'd write it out, and then we'd increment I by 1, then this would be 2, and then this would be 2, it would still evaluate to true, and it would always evaluate to true, and we'd be in an infinite loop. So that's why we have to give it a condition, which is something like while I is less than or equal to 10. And we also have to increment I at the end. If we didn't increment this, then what's going to happen is while I is less than or equal to 10, so it's going to say while 1 is less than 10, which is true, do this, and then it's going to go back around, but this is still going to be 1. So this is always going to evaluate to true, and we're going to be inside an infinite loop. So we need both of these things present. We need a condition, and we need something to increment it. And now this is going to increment I each time. Eventually I will get to 10. I will get to 10, and this will still be true because while 10 is equal to 10, that will be true. But then it will get to 11, and it will say while 11 is less than or equal to 10, this will be false and will jump out of the while loop. Okay, so let's try this out. And you can see we loop through I 10 times and we got this output. So you'll notice that there's a comma at the end here. So let's try to do something to our code to get rid of that. Let's look at our next loop. So here we're resetting I to 1, and we're saying while I is less than or equal to 10, then it can do this. Okay, then we go into our if conditional. If I is less than 10, write it out and concatenate on a comma. If it's not less than 10, then it must be 10, and write it out and concatenate on this exclamation mark and these break tags. Let's see that. And you can see we got the output that we wanted. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Here we're setting I to 0, and we're setting x to a new array of 10 undefined elements. So while I is less than 10, x sub I is set to I plus 1 times I plus 1. So at first I is going to be 0. So if we didn't have this plus 1 here, this would be 0 times 0. But I didn't want to do that. I want to do 1 times 1 and then incrementing from there. So that's why we had to put I plus 1 times I plus 1. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, and so what you can see here is I got the numbers 1 to 10, and they're all to the power of 2. They're all squared. Okay, but we can try this without. Oh, sorry, that's not what I want to do. So for example, if we take this away, and let's see what happens there. Okay, and we got a totally different output. Okay, but what I wanted is I wanted it to start from 1, so we had to do plus 1. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next one. We're resetting I to 0. X is set to a new array of 10 undefined elements. And here we're saying while I is less than 10, x sub I is set to, and then we're running we're running the square root method of the math class on I plus 1, which is going to be 1 to begin with. And we're writing that out. This is all pretty straightforward. Okay, I just want to point out about this. This is a built-in method into JavaScript. So there's a math class, and the math class has all sorts of methods that help us to do things such as finding the square root. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. And so you can see what we have here is the numbers 1 to 10, and we calculated their square roots. Okay, let's go to the next one. We're setting I to 0, setting j to 0, and we're setting x to be an array of 10 defined elements. And each of the different elements, they have their own value from 1 to 10. Okay, let's look at our while loop. Delete this. Okay, so here we're saying while I is less than 10, okay, because this is this length is 10. While I is less than 10, x sub I is set to a new array of 10 undefined elements. Okay, so each of these guys now is an array, and they're all an array of 10 undefined elements. While j is less than 10 times 10, okay, so while j is less than 100, x sub I sub j is set to j plus 1. Okay, so what you can see here is what we're doing is we just want to output the numbers 1 to 100. Okay, so this is the first element in the array, and this array contains this array, and so this will first be x sub 0, 0, so it will be the first element of the array of the first array. Okay, and let's output this first. Okay, so this is the output that I wanted, and I'll show you the code that I need to write in order to get this output. So the first thing that I did was I said, if x sub I sub j is less than 10, I just want to write out a 0, because if we didn't do this, we would just have 1, but I want it to be 0, 1, so they line up. So we're checking if it's less than 10. If it is, we're first just outputting a 0. Okay. The next thing we're checking is if we're on number 100 or not. So if this x sub I sub j is set to 100, then we're going to write it out, and we're going to concatenate on a period. If it's not 100, then it must be somewhere from 1 to 99, and we're going to write it out, and we're going to concatenate on this comma. Okay. The last thing we're doing is we're checking if the number modulo 10 is equal to 0. So basically what this is doing is checking if the number is checking if it's like 10, 20, 30. Okay, actually what it's doing is it's checking whatever number divided by 10 if it's leaving no remainder. If it's leaving no remainder, then we know it must be like 10, 20, 30, and so on, and we're going to output a break, and that way we can get it to break nicely once it gets to the 10th element of each one. Okay, then we're incrementing j by 1, and we're incrementing I by 1. Okay, thanks for watching.